What's up, everyone, and welcome into the Buffalo Sports Collective. It is Friday, May 19th, 2023. As always, I am PK alongside my co-host, Phil. Phil, it's a weird weekend to have no concerns about what the Buffalo Bandits are going to be doing because they're on a bye, but there is a Game 3 in the Western Conference happening Saturday night, 9:30, that will have everybody in Bandit Land's attention because the winner of that moves on and gets the opportunity, the pleasure, if you will, to take on these red-hot Buffalo Bandits.
Yeah, I mean, there's not too many times that throughout the year we love the bye weeks. I know their schedule throughout the year is kind of weird. They play, a bunch of games in a row, then they have like 3 weeks off randomly. You're like, what is the schedule doing? And even into playoffs, it's something that with how incredible they're playing, you'd almost want them to keep going. But I think if there was ever a time to have a bye week, especially this late in the season into playoffs, I think this is it. The Bandits definitely need a week of rest, and especially for some of their guys who were banged up after that last series, but pretty much everybody out of that last series was banged up in some sort of way. So good to see them get a little break, get healthy, get fresh, get their legs back underneath them, and get ready for a championship series for the third straight time.
And some of these guys, they also are coming off the Chaos back-to-back finals as well. 3 straight seasons, maybe? I can't remember. I haven't dug really into the PLL yet, but a lot of them have also played in the PLL with the Chaos.
Straight finals.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I mean, Max Adler, he has been to, I think it's 7 straight seasons of championships, and he hasn't won them all, but I mean, 7 straight years of playing in a championship game is just unheard of, beyond belief, and wow, just impressive. So remember, you can follow along with us on Facebook and Instagram at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on Twitter at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com, where you can find Phil's article every time the Buffalo Bandits play. Whether they win or lose, Phil has an article. So Phil, there is a West Coast game taking place Saturday night, like we talked about very briefly there. We're going to dive into it in a second. But it got me thinking, and I've been thinking this for a while. So for PK's Hot Corner, it is Friday, so got to go in the Hot Corner to lead you into a nice warm weekend. The West Coast has the best place to be a sports fan. And I'm not talking weather-wise. I'm not talking about the sports that are out there. I'm just saying they don't have late games. Like, where we have to wait until 10:30 sometimes to see a very late game. Like for this situation, we have to wait until 9:30 for them to play. If we were in, say, California or Oregon or Washington or wherever else the Pacific time zone is, all the games start much earlier. So that game would start at what? If I'm doing the math correctly, 6:30, 5:30? I can't remember. I think it's 6:30 because I think it's a 3-hour time difference. But the NFL, they would start games at like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and they would be over by 9 or 10 o'clock at night. There's none of this waiting up until 11:30, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at night for these games. I think it would be delightful to just come home from work, and guess what? There's a game on TV, whether it's basketball or hockey or whatever it is. It's on TV. It's nonstop. I would absolutely love it. I mean, there's no late nights. The Super Bowl, Phil, for example, Super Bowl. You don't have to stay up until 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. It'd be glorious, and I would be a much happier person.
In this scenario, are you still a Buffalo sports fan?
Yeah, I'm a transplant.
So the only problem with that would be the 7 o'clock like Sabres games. I mean, I know you get home by 4 o'clock, but I would say the average 9 to 5, you're getting home and it's already an hour into the game. That's where you'd struggle a little bit. But as far as like football season
for
goes,
that case though, how many other Eastern Coast teams fans are in the West Coast? So like all your teams are still playing at like 7 when it would be playing in East Coast at 7 o'clock. I'm getting the game at 4 o'clock, and guess what? I don't care about none of your West Coast teams. I'm going to bed.
Oh, I mean, that's very fair. I think overall it's good, especially for football, like you said. I mean, the only worry I would have for football is fantasy football. I'd have to make sure I set some alarms and get that lineup set before that early game. But it'd be great to
the London game though. Whew.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say you could skip, but the Bills are in London this year, so we can't skip that. You're waking up pretty early, but other than that, I mean, yeah, I feel like it's a good time. You have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there's football on the whole time, instead of lunch, dinner, dinner again / midnight snack / bedtime.
I'm seeing not very many issues with the West Coast time zone.
No, I'm all for it. I mean, you and I are all for our 1 p.m. Bills games. Get this primetime nonsense out of here. I'm really happy as an organization that the Bills are getting primetime games. That's obviously good for them.
I'm not.
But yeah, as far as like me personally and when I want to watch them, I don't want to start watching them at 8:30 at night on a Monday where I have work the next day and I'm laying in bed watching it, kind of waiting for it to get over with so I can fall asleep and have a miserable, exhausted day the next day.
Very selfish of them trying to expand their the fan base. It's just
it's a little rude.
I want them to be bad again for that exact reason to go back to Sunday 1 o'clock.
And again, we're right back to the draft. I mean, I gotta wait till 11:30 at night for the draft because we're a good team. Just go back to being bad. We can be top 10. Get excited. Who are we going to draft this year? It's super exciting. Top 10 pick. Are we going to trade up, trade down? Who's this amazing player we're going to get? No. Now we got to wait all the way until 11:30 to get a tight end that confuses the heck out of us until we settle down and look at it a little closer. And it was a great pick. Great pick, Brandon P.
I think it just circles back around that we were born in the wrong time zone, and I think we're going to be having to move this podcast out west.
I will gladly go live near my Seattle Kraken secondary team.
You got to befriend the Kraken, though, otherwise he's going to eat you. So we'll move on here. The NLL announced, I think it was Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday, because that was the yesterday before this episode's coming out. But I don't know. I'm all confused. It's going to be Friday when this is coming out, so I'm enjoying it. But the awards have come out. The finalists have come out. I think we're going to run through them all. And as we're going through them all, I guess if you have a favorite that you're thinking is going to win it or you would want to win it, I know there's some Bandits in here that we would want to win, but does that mean they're going to win it? Possibly, possibly not. But the more important question is if there's anybody left off the top 3 that you think should have been in there. For me, there's one award that I think they left off 2 major people, and I think the main reason for it, and I'll explain that when we get to it, but we'll start off here. MVP, the 3 nominees are Christian Del Bianco, Dane Smith, and Jeff Teat. I think all 3 of them are deserving. 2 of them could be in the finals. One of them is guaranteed to be in the finals. Christian Del Bianco is up for a fight to be in the finals, and then one player just didn't make the playoffs in general. But he did have almost a record-breaking season for him. He came up 2 points short, I think it was, 136. The record's 137. But Phil, any problems or missing pieces out of the MVP?
I don't think so. I know there were some grumbles over everyone wants their players or their team's top player in it. Overall, though, I would say, to me, the big fights between Del Bianco and Dane Smith, I think what Jeff Teat did was incredible, and I think he had an amazing season. He got the scoring title. He played really, really well, but his team, and I know it's an MVP, it's, a player, not really team-based, but it's what you can do for your team and what that player means to that team, and obviously without Jeff Teat, we don't know what New York would be, probably not much at all, so I understand that he's very valuable to that team, but they did not make playoffs. They didn't have a good season. So it's a little bit tough to give him something like this when Del Bianco led his team to the playoffs and where they are now, as did Dane Smith. And I think to me, I think it's closer than it seems. I think Del Bianco played incredibly well, but so did Dane Smith, given the injuries that the Bandits offense had, leading how many late game, that last second goal to tie it up, to push it to overtime, getting that overtime goal. I feel like Dane Smith meant so much to this team this year with all the offensive injuries. He really kept this team on pace and was able to, scrape by some of these extremely close games. They all kind of happened through him. And even how many times do we say that the other team knows Dane Smith is the guy out there, and yet he's coming away with 9, 10, 11, 12 points a game. And we're like, wow, even though they know they have one guy to key in on, they can't do it. He's the reason that this offense is staying together, and he's one of the big reasons that they were able to keep winning and, again, put themselves in the position that they're in. So, for me, I think it's extremely close between Del Bianco and Smith. I could see people going Del Bianco simply because he did have not only an incredible year, but it's a little bit of a shakeup. I don't know how many people are going to want Dane Smith again, just to kind of mix things up a little bit. But I think Dane Smith, at the same time, deserves every bit of credit that an MVP type season that he had, and I think it's going to be very close between those two. I could see it going either way.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remind everybody this has already been decided. These are just the finalists, the top 3 vote getters. This is all regular season based. It's not due to any playoff action whatsoever. It's simply regular season, what you did then, and how important you are to your team and your single game accomplishments. But I think there's some names out there. Mitch Jones had a great season once he moved over to Philly. Tom Schreiber with Toronto, everything he did. Connor Fields leading the Rochester Nighthawks to the playoffs. Even guys like Joe Rezateris, Wesley Berg, and Lyle Thompson and Andrew Q. I think a lot of them are deserving, but I think they got this right. I think the top 3 there are the correct choices. I think Jeff Teat had an unbelievable season. There's no downplaying his accomplishments and what he meant to New York, but I have an issue giving an MVP to a player whose team didn't make the playoffs. And I understand that this is not a team-based award. I completely understand that, but if your team would have just barely missed it, I think you would have had more call for him to win it. I wouldn't be shocked if he does get it because of how unbelievable a season, 56 goals, 80 assists, 136 points, 105 loose balls. It's just, he was the reason New York was in the position they were in. And that's saying a lot considering where they were. So he basically had no help. He's kind of like the Dane Smith over there where it was a one-man wrecking crew. Dane Smith, I think he definitely deserves it. Like you said, with all the injuries, him and Buchanan were the only healthy bodies left in the forward group. I personally am going to give it to Del Bianco just because of the incredible season he had. I mean, a sub 9.5 goal, or I think he had 9.27, I think it was something like that, whereas his goals against 19 assists, just an unbelievable season for a team that I think I had them missing playoffs, Phil. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I had Calgary missing the playoffs, and they ended up as the number 2 seed, 1 game away from the finals. How much do I know? Not much. So I think it's between Dane Smith and Del Bianco, but I think they would give it to Del Bianco just because of such an incredible season he had. I mean, the transition game for Calgary is probably one of the best we've ever seen, and a lot of that is due to Del Bianco. So I'll give it to Del Bianco for that award, but we'll move on to the Rookie of the Year. There are 3 nominees, and I think they're all deserving, but I think there's one that stands a bit higher than the other one. Another goalie, Brett Dobson for Georgia, Jonathan Donville for Panther City, and Jack Hanna for Las Vegas. Phil, any qualms or any missing person from that list?
I don't think so. I think for the most part, the rookies all kind of played out how they are. I mean, I feel like the NLL is tough where you have a lot of rookies that kind of sneak in toward the top, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of them, similar to the NHL, take a long time to kind of get acclimated and kind of figure out how they're going to play, what it's going to be like in the NLL. I feel like it's just a slower pace into the NLL as far as some of the higher scoring. I mean, yes, you have your top couple forwards who always kind of come out swinging and do an incredible job, but for the most part, I feel like it takes most rookies a little bit longer to kind of get acclimated and really step up and start playing really, really well. So I think for the most part, they did a good job with the people that are there.
Yeah, I think Brett Dobson, he was definitely one of the ones that led the Georgia turnaround. I think he's deserving of this award. I think Jack Hanna from Las Vegas being second on their team in scoring, leading their charge in their first season, he's one of the core pieces that they're going to be building around. But Jonathan Donville, for me, he's the winner here. I know he came a bit slower, like you were talking about, but top 20 in point producing, 90-point season, 23 goals, 67 assists. He had one of the highest assist totals for a rookie in a long time. I mean, Jeff Teat just broke the record last year, so it's not a very long time, but I'm giving it to Jonathan Donville just because of what he was able to do. His team made the playoffs as opposed to the other two, and like I said, that kind of means a bit more to me, so we'll move on here. Goaltender of the Year. These are the 3 that I thought were going to be in the nomination and the finalists. Christian Del Bianco, Nick Rose, and Matt Vince. And I have a bit of a twist, and I think it was Teddy Jenner, Pat Gregoire from the NLL show that they do weekly, Coast to Coast, I believe it's called. I think I stole this from them, Phil, but any issues with the 3 nominees for Goaltender of the Year?
No. Yeah, Del Bianco, Rose, Vince. I mean, not sadly. I mean, in a good way for the Bandits and not so great way for the Bandits that Rose is always in there, but Del Bianco came out of absolutely nowhere. I mean, no, he's been around for quite a long time. We had a really, really good season. So did Calgary. So I think those three would be the three. I don't really think anyone else to me stood out all that much if you're thinking of just general goaltending throughout the league. I mean, some other ones were good, but I think those three stood above everybody else. So I think they're pretty solid choices for the goalie.
Yeah, I think the only other one would be Nick DeMood from Panther City. I mean,
Yes.
he had a 10.31 goals against and a 79 save percentage.
I mean,
but
even
really,
Goodleaf as well. I mean, not sorry.
Yes.
Goodleaf. He wasn't in much, but yeah. I mean, DeMood would be the other one, especially with Panther City being the type of team it is. You know, being just the up and coming team, still struggling a little bit to kind of get their feet. Obviously, they had a very good, successful season, so he's another one that I think. I don't know. It's again team based in a way, like Vince and
Right.
I mean, you know how I feel about Rose, but Vince as well played in front of an incredible defense. Rose plays in front of an even better defense, and Calgary also had a very, very good defense with their transition, caused turnovers, and all the nonsense that they do over there. So the top goalies also play in front of really good defenses. So if you look at it that way, not that Panther City Lacrosse Club is a bad defense, but at the same time, I feel like he had the weaker of the four defenses, if you call it, out of those players. So in that aspect, if you're looking at it from a team-based, kind of award in a way, I think he might have arguably played the best out of most of these goalies simply due to the quality of defense he has in front of him compared to the other ones. But I do agree. I think he'd be the one that'd be missing from this group.
So I'm giving it to Nick Rose just because I think he had the best overall season. I hear exactly what you're saying. I understand it. And it kind of looks bad after the performance he put in the games versus Buffalo. And also he had close to 80, 85 saves less than Matt Vince. And this is, again, no shot at any of them. I wouldn't be shocked if any of them win it. But when you got a 9.03 goals against, an 80 save percentage, 13-5. I know Del Bianco is very close with the 9.28. I think I said 19.27. It's 9.28, 81 save percentage, 712 saves. Matt Vince, 742 saves. It's basically like deciding who is your favorite child. And I'm never going to be a parent, so I can never debate that kind of thing. But it's kind of like that where you have three kids in front of you and they're all asking mom, who's your favorite kid? And mind you, the mother, I've never been a mother either. Oddly enough, I've never been a mother. But I feel like, and again, never going to be in this position, so I have no idea if this is actually true, but I'm calling it like it is. I think it is true. I think personally parents have a favorite child. So for me, if I was between the three and my favorite child this year, I think barely, but it would be Nick Rose just based on the numbers and where he led his team, even with the great defense in front of him. And remember, no Chris Corbeil. Mitch DeSnew only played in 11 games. So yes, it was great defense, but they were missing two big pieces.
Yeah, I think the big thing with this one, which is the big thing that kind of is similar to Matt Vince has been for the last few years, it's kind of comes down, at least for me, like who gets MVP, who gets goalie of the year. If they end up giving Smith MVP, I think Del Bianco personally deserves goalie of the year. But if he gets MVP, then I don't think you give it to both. Obviously, if your goalie gets it, then he deserves it. But I don't think they often give the same, that big of an award to the same player. I'm sure it's possible, but I think if Del Bianco gets MVP, Rose would get goalie of the year. I think if Dane Smith gets MVP, Del Bianco would get goalie of the year. And I think the big thing for me is that Del Bianco, I don't think Calgary's defense is quite as good as Toronto's, but the big thing, again, I've said it all year, and I know it's a sticking point, I guess, with me. But the goals against 9.28 is ridiculous. But again, to me, it's the save percentage is that extra percent higher, and at the same time, you're seeing an extra 50-plus shots, which throughout the entire season is an extra game's worth of shots on you that you have to save, which is a lot. That's a lot of goals to potentially let in. I mean, we said it with Matt Vince in the game that he just played with his 52 saves. Like, yes, they might not have been the best saves, but you still have to make those saves. Same thing with Del Bianco, and the difference between him and Rose is that he had an extra, I cannot do that math that quickly in my head, was at 45... 57, an extra 57 saves throughout the year, and still had a ridiculously low goals against, and the save percentage because of those extra saves is a little higher. So, like you said, I think Nick Rose and Del Bianco are extremely similar. The big thing to me that I'm now realizing in favor of Del Bianco as well is something that we'll talk about a little later on as well. But the transition game that he brings is pretty much unparalleled, unmatched. The guy is ridiculous. So not only is his saving ability insane, his transition ability to, I mean, the Calgary Roughnecks have, I don't even want to say it's arguably, I think they do simply have the greatest transition game in the sport right now, and Del Bianco is a major part of that, and I don't think Rose or Vince have the ability that he does to pick the ball up, have these perfect outlet passes, and really sets that transition game up. So I think that's something that really sets him apart from the other two on that list, is that, yes, the other two are extremely good goalies, and I'm not taking anything against them, but Del Bianco adds that extra element of the transition game. His passing is just incredible, and it's honestly, it's a lot of fun to watch, which is potentially sad coming up. We'll see what happens with those. But, I mean, I think that just adds an extra element to his game that pushes him over the top compared to the other two, at least this season.
And with how long we've been talking about this segment, you can kind of see how close it's going to be. And I honestly, I don't know how the voters are going to pick this one. It's a very interesting one, but we'll move on. This is the award that I have an issue with, and it's very simple. It's the Transition Player of the Year. Reed Bowering, Zach Currier, and Chandler Rogers. Bowering is not listed as a transition player. He's listed as a defensive player. Now, again, I've been complaining nonstop all year long, 2 years, about the stats for the NLL. So could that be wrong? It could possibly be wrong. But I've also seen other people say that he's listed as defense. Why is he up for the Transition Player of the Year? For me, it's nothing against the season he had. I just think he's in the wrong category. I think he's more a defensive player than a transition player. So for me, that's the issue I have. There are two other nominees that I think should have gotten the opportunity, and you can call me a homer if you want, but he had an unbelievable season. Ian McKay, 19, 19, and 38, 121 loose balls, 16 caused turnovers, and Matt Gilroy, former Bandit, 10, 17, 27, 154 loose balls, 26 caused turnovers, and 11 block shots. I think one of those two should have taken Bowering's spot, and Bowering should have been in the Defensive Player of the Year category. That's just my opinion. Either way, I don't think any of them would have stood a chance, because I think Zach Currier is going to be winning back-to-back Transition Player of the Year because he's just a disgusting, unbelievable, and really, really good player.
I would love to continue on with this segment, but I have absolutely nothing to say against anything you just said. I think Ian McKay absolutely
Phil's hot
deserves.
And bothered right now.
What's up?
You're hot and bothered right now.
Yeah, pretty much. I would absolutely love Zach Currier. He will never leave Calgary. He's pretty much that team, and now he's got, I believe, his brother, right? I know there's another Currier. Josh. Are they actually brothers?
I believe so, yeah.
I thought so as well.
I think they're brothers.
So I don't think either of them are really going anywhere anytime soon. Zach Currier is just an absolute beast, and he's another one then. I mean, if you really want to throw out a potential MVP, I mean, his numbers are pretty much otherworldly compared to everybody else that plays the position. So I think McKay, for what he did for the Bandits, and like literally what a transition player kind of is, a player that can play offense and defense. I think McKay had a ridiculously incredible season doing just that, playing literally forward shifts, playing defense shifts, and then also transitioning from defense to offense. So I absolutely think that McKay deserved to be in the running for this. I think he had, again, like you said, a little bit of a homer pick, I guess, but I think he played incredible this year. I think his defense took a step forward. I think his offense was incredible when the offense was hurting and needed somebody on that left side. I think he was able to step into that role and play extremely well. And then the amount of double shifts that he had playing defense to offense, truly transitioning, I would say he's the transition player on the Bandits, and arguably their only one. I know they have some guys who can do it as well, but he's their true transition player, and he does both extremely well, defense and offense. So I think that he absolutely, again, maybe a little bit of a homer pick, but whatever. I think he deserved to be in the running for this. I do think Bowering should have been as a defenseman. I think transition player needs to be just defined a little bit better, I think, or like you mentioned, just how they actually label the players. If that's not what you want that player labeled as, then fix it, and also maybe have stats for all these players. That'd be nice as well. Outside of that, though, I think Zach Currier is pretty much a runaway for this transition player of the year.
Yeah, so either my hot and bothered player, Chandler Rogers, wins his third. Your hot bothered player. I should have figured this out a lot sooner. I knew you liked Currier from the beginning, but I don't think I knew how deep your love and affection was for him. He would win his second back-to-back, and then Bowering would win his first. So we'll move on. this is the place that I thought Bowering should have been. But we'll go on to the Defensive Player of the Year. 3 nominees: Latrell Harris, Graham Hossick, and Brad Cree, 2 Toronto players. I don't think this one's going to be all that close, and I think Graham Hossick is the clear runaway favorite for this award just based on the numbers that he put in. And I understand that Latrell Harris had an unbelievable scoring season. I'm pulling up his stats right here because it's really slow, but I guess I'll dive into that when it loads up. But he had such an unbelievable season, led the defense with 30 points, 10-20. He had a great season. There's no denying it. But I just think when you're putting the numbers together for a defenseman, which this category is for, Graham Hossick, 49 caused turnovers, 16 block shots, 139 loose balls. Yes, he only had 9 points, but that's what you want out of your defenseman, is taking those soakers, causing those turnovers, and running away with it.
Yeah, I think Hossick is by far one of the best true one-on-one defenders in the game with his fun little feet shoes, not shoes, whatever he wears on his feet that are very interesting when we played them and got to watch him play. His little webs, his duck feet. But yes, I think he is the true one-on-one defensive player of the year. I think he's one of the hardest players if you're matched up against him to play against. We saw a lot of our, better players like Nanticoke, who's usually running people over, go up against him one-on-one and pretty much just got stopped. I think he is just, again, the true defensive player of the year. If there's one in the league right now that you want to think of as just like, who do you want on your defense? I think to me it's Hossick. I think Brad Cree also had a really good season, as did Latrell Harris, but I agree with you. I think it's Graham Hossick for defensive player of the year.
Yeah, if Hossick wins it, he ties Kyle Rubish for most defensive player of the year awards with 4. Graham Hossick won it 18, 19, and 20. Mitch Disnew won it last year. I think that's just, it's such, such detailed in between and trying to figure it out. I know that didn't make any sense, but there's so, I can't think of the words here, Phil. There's not much difference between all these players. You're kind of just like picking hairs, which one is a little bit better. I mean, all of them are deserving of the award. Latrell Harris, like I said, great transition game this year. Even though he's not a transition player, he kind of led the defense and can get up in the rush. But I think Hossick just had those better numbers that you look for a defensive player. But the rest of these we can kind of fly through because there's not a ton of stats to back it up. Sportsmanship of the Year award, Phil. I don't really know if we really even have to dive into this because I think we all know who the winner is going to be. It's Kyle Buchanan, Tom Schreiber, or Lyle Thompson, who's probably going to win it again, Phil. Let me pull up the numbers here. And that would be 5 straight years that he has won it, and it would be the 6th straight year a Georgia Swarm player has won it. I don't know why Georgia is so sportsmanship. Maybe because the Georgia peach and peaches are sweet. I don't know.
I like where you're headed with that. They have a little bit warmer weather maybe, but yeah, Lyle Thompson, just one of those guys that, I mean, again, there's certain players on other teams that you and I like either for their attitude in a good way or bad way, and there's other players, some players that you simply have to root for because they have a good attitude. Lyle Thompson's one of those guys, you see him do incredible things pretty much game in, game out for what he means to that team. At the same time, he never does it with any real attitude, positive, negative. He goes out there, scores a mind-blowing goal, shakes it off like he does it every time because that's simply what he does, runs back to the bench, everything's fine. He gets, he's one of those players similar to Nanticoke where he gets beaten and hit and, constantly kind of tormented and just takes it, doesn't ever really fight back, and is just one of those truly good guys out there in the game. And he just doesn't seem to let anything really get under his skin. I mean, obviously he's out there playing intense and playing very, strong, but at the same time, like you said, he's already won it 5 times in a row, and everything that we've seen from whenever we watch them play, and you and I constantly rave about possibly having this guy. I mean, when there were slight rumors that he might get traded, and then Georgia went off and almost made playoffs, so he's not going anywhere. But when there were slight rumors, I don't think the Bandits would have had the firepower to get him, but he's definitely the type of player you want on your team, and just a all-around great guy, and I could absolutely see him winning it again.
Yeah, not just everything he does on the field, but it's everything he does off the field as well for the sport, the community, everything he does. It's just he's a true sportsmanship person, and he's going to probably win his 6th straight or sportsmanship of the year. But we'll move on. Teammate of the year. This one is more difficult because we're not in the locker room. There's a reason that the NLLPA votes on this one and not writers or anybody that covers the team or anything like that, because you're not in the locker room. You don't really understand what kind of teammate this player is. But just based on everything that we've seen and the talk that all his teammates do about him and just his attitude on the field, the nominees are Kyle Buchanan, Dan Dawson, and John LaFontaine. I apologize. I think you just got to be Kyle Buchanan. I think he's deserving of it. He is a former sportsmanship. Hang on, let me pull this one up. I think he won sportsmanship of the year back in 2015, but he's never won teammate of the year, and this only goes back to 2015. Mike Poulin has won it 3 times. Dan Dawson won it back in 2020, but I think this is definitely a homer pick, Phil, because I don't know what Dan Dawson is like in the locker room. I don't know what John LaFontaine, I did it again, Phil. LaFontaine does in his locker room, but just based on everything that we see out of Kyle Buchanan, he's just a class act person, always putting his team first. I think I saw somebody, Adam Levy, I think he put it out, that Josh Byrne, when he was hurt, Kyle Buchanan was texting him every other day, just telling him what's going on, checking in on him. Just a hardworking, grinded out player, and I think Kyle Buchanan definitely deserves teammate of the year.
Yeah, like you said, we don't know what happens in the locker room or behind closed doors, but he always seems like that kind, and pretty much the way I just described Lyle, I mean, it's the same reason he's up for a sportsmanship award as well. He goes out there, plays 110%, but he's never the one being chippy. He's never the one getting penalties. He's never the one up in someone's face or fighting back. He's always just, plays 110%, plays hard, plays physical, but at the same time, gets up, shakes it off, sprints to the bench every single time. So he's always just, we call him that, what do you call him, a water bug, right?
Yep.
He's just that player that is just always going, and someone that I think a lot of players could learn a lot from. And being the main veteran on this Buffalo Bandits team, he shows out there every single game. And for one of the older guys, he's one of the few people all year that didn't get injured. And I think he's just always been that positive guy. I mean, I'm sure you saw when he was mic'd up and having a little bit of fun before the game when he told him he was mic'd up, and you can just see he just has that very calming / fun atmosphere. He's very supportive. He's always just kind of seems like the teammate you want. And very similar to Lyle Thompson, he's another player that you just want on your team, you want in your locker room, and someone that you and I, we've said it multiple times, we weren't sure if he was going to be back this year, whether, whatever was going to happen, but I think the Bandits extremely benefited from him returning this year. So I absolutely, like you said, homer pick, fine, whatever, it is what it is, but I would give it to him as well. I could see Dan Dawson possibly getting it as a send-off to his career if he is truly done, but I do think Kyle Buchanan deserves it.
So we got 4 more, and I'm just going to run through them and the names because we're going a bit longer than I thought we would on these awards. But if there's anyone in particular you really want to talk about, we can talk about it in a second. Coach of the Year, Mike Hansen from Rochester, Tracy Kelusky from Panther City, and Kurt Malosky from Calgary. GM of the Year, Mike Board from Calgary, Dan Carey from Rochester, and Jamie DeWick from Toronto. Media Person of the Year, Pat Gregoire, Teddy Jenner, and Adam Levy. And then Executive of the Year, Melissa Blades, heck of a last name, from Calgary, Mike Fine from Vegas, and then Matt Hutchings from Colorado. So any of those really you want to talk about, or if you want to just move on, that's fine too.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on there, and just a lot that we don't know a ton about. I mean, it's hard to kind of get a lot of these, especially just the NLL being what it is, and we see what their website can be sometimes. It's hard to kind of pinpoint what's going on, but I mean, Coach of the Year, if you want to run through it real quick, I mean, Hassan and Kelusky, oh my goodness, we are struggling with names right now. Rochester, Panther City, both up-and-coming teams, both expansion teams in recent years, both made a solid playoff push. Rochester had a little bit of a huge early success and was mildly scary for a moment, and then they kind of fell off the face of the planet toward the end of the season. But seeing what they can do with the younger team is impressive, and both of those teams getting back to playoffs or getting to playoffs for the first time in franchise history, I mean, it's huge, and a huge credit to those coaches. GM of the Year, I definitely think Toronto with everything they brought in. I mean, you mentioned your Eastern Division pick of the year. Going to bring that up all the time. That the pieces they were bringing in were massive, and the offseason additions they made were huge. And, I mean, at the same time, you want to compare them directly to the Bandits, not to make anything against the Bandits. I mean, they brought in, I think, the pieces that they needed to make work with. I mean, Bomberry was mid-season, but at the same time, I think Robinson would have been huge if he was here all year. So I think the Bandits did what they needed to, but I think Toronto made some really big pushes in the offseason, especially with some of their roster turnover. Media Person of the Year, we like all three quite a bit and what they do for the NLL as a whole and just their personalities and growing the game and everything that they do. But Teddy Jenner's been on the show, so we'll give him our shout out. And Executive of the Year, like you kind of mentioned, I mean, we talked about it a little bit beforehand. We aren't exactly sure how to rate this because we don't know, not in a bad way, but it's kind of hard to pinpoint what these people do because it's pretty high up and internal organization type stuff. But Las Vegas being the newbie on the block, I think he deserves it.
Ditto. I got nothing to argue there. But Phil, it got me thinking though that there are plenty of awards here, but I think there are ways to expand it a bit. I think for the Media Person of the Year, I think that is a huge and awesome award, but I think you can also do and kind of split it maybe, do a broadcasting award because John Gertler, I mean, he's done 350 some odd straight games consecutively and he's never won the award. I think he's definitely deserving. Again, another homer one, but I don't really care. And then maybe a Journalist of the Year award so you can get some of those guys that I'm not tooting our horn, whatever. We're still a small little podcast out in Buffalo. Who really cares about us? But I think some of those ones that write articles for the sport, some of those ones like Adam Levy, I'm so happy that he's up there because he's more of a small time guy who does write for the NLL, but he's not like going on the ESPN Plus and announcing the games like Pat Gregoire and Teddy Jenner. Everybody knows those two. Adam Levy getting that shout out, I think that's a huge, huge accomplishment. I think if you split up that award doing broadcasting and journalist, I think I would like that. Maybe a 6-man of the year so you can get some of these face-off guys. Some of these, I mean, Jake Withers, he had an unbelievable season. He's not up for anything. Trevor Baptiste, not up for anything. A guy like Max Adler is never going to win anything because he's just a Fogo guy. But I think having a 6-man of the year, one of those type guys, will get some of those more specialty niche roles an opportunity to really shine a light on what they do. And then maybe a comeback player of the year because whether it's injury or something they overcame on the field, off the field, or just battling back like Joel Taylor, coming back after all these years off, getting back into the game. I mean, somebody like that, just a nasty injury coming back, like a Randy Stotts, I think he from Halifax, he had a really nasty injury. He went back out in the playoff game, but just expanding a bit more. And then, eventually an All-Star game and the Hall of Fame and expanding further and further. But, that's crazy talk, Phil. Hall of Fame, All-Star game, that's unheard of.
I think what you're saying is that for these new awards, we just need to pick up our own awards that aren't listed,
it's like
and we will
BSC award show.
Yeah, we'll take over those, but not even just for Buffalo, we'll do NLL Comeback Player of the Year based on us. And 6-man, you don't have
$1 million paycheck
deal. Yeah, you'll never have to ask me for an award for Withers, another one of my favorite players out there. He's incredible. And then. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. I lost it.
This is a Phil Hot and Bothered show.
Yeah, Withers it. Well, it's we don't get to talk about around the league players we love all that often, except you, who loves Toronto and Rogers, and we get to talk about them.
5
what are we up
times
to? Yeah, 10 times in the last couple of years that you get to mention some of your favorite players. So you're living the dream. And I get Halifax a few times, and I never get Courier ever. So maybe coming up. Maybe on this show.
There you go. But we do have a monster game Saturday night. Game 3, Colorado in Calgary. Winner comes on and faces the Bandits in the finals. It's a complete guess, Phil. And it's just based on the info that I've been able to gather. And again, I want to repeat this. I am not saying that these are the final days that the games are going to be played. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I honestly have no idea. This is just my best educated guess. And guess what? I have the microphone. I can talk, so I can make the guess. I think if it's Calgary that advances, the game's going to be Friday and Sunday because the reports are that they're not playing a Monday game in Halifax. That would mean that Friday, Sunday works out perfectly. First game in Buffalo. If it's Colorado, I think it's a Saturday, Monday game because there is the Denver Nuggets possibility of a Sunday game for Game 7 versus the Lakers. So that's out of the question. They can't have that. So I think that would be a Saturday, Monday game. I think that's why they are holding off announcing when Game 1 is. Is it going to be Friday or Saturday? I think they're more hoping Saturday just because more tickets are going to be sold. But everybody that's out there throwing out, hey, it's going to be Saturday at this time, or it's going to be Friday at this time, you don't know what you're talking about because it's not finalized. If they knew exactly when it would be, they would have announced it. I think it would probably be better if they would have went on the record and say, hey, if it's Calgary, it's Friday. If it's Colorado, it's Saturday, so more people could plan. If that is the case, once again, don't know, best educated guess, but I think that would probably be the best route to go. I think they're just deciding between Friday and Saturday based on who wins that game, but I think come, like 11:30, 12 o'clock, you're going to get the announcement, hey, we're starting this game in Buffalo on this date.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that it's all over the place. I mean, I get it. The NLL is a smaller kind of league, and this is kind of what we have to deal with, that we don't know up until the last second, unlike other sports where it's
the back-to-back games in the same weekends that's the issue this year.
Yeah, which, I mean, at the same time, I understand, and again, they're trying to be nice, we believe, to the PLL. We think this is why that's happening. At the same time, last year's finals went forever, it seemed. I mean, the season is ridiculously long when you play once a week, and then you get into these 3-week series. I mean, quite literally, you're looking at potentially 6 games, 6 weeks of just the Eastern finals and then the championship finals if they both go to 3 series. So, I mean, it can very quickly add up. So I understand why they're doing what they're doing, but like you said, it's causing a bit of a mayhem, and Monday night, like, that's just...
Might not be Monday night, though. It could be a Monday more afternoon game because it is Memorial Day and a lot of people do have off.
Any finals game where the Bandits could potentially win it all on a Monday sounds rather depressing.
It is weird.
It's weird, and I will have to work, so it better not be in the afternoon. I will probably cry quite a bit. I will have to do the media blackout, watch it when I get home. It'd be miserable. It'd be miserable. I mean, Sunday at least sounds a little better. I mean, at least it's still the weekend. Monday sounds just like a gross day for a championship potential final. I mean, either way, no matter what happens in the first game, it's still going to be one team can win it on potentially a Monday. Don't love that.
Maybe just bump the season back one more week or try to figure something out. So if you want to do this to help out the PLL, the finals are still spaced out more. I mean, this is just a learning experience for the whole league. Who really knows what they're going to end up doing next year? But it does stink that the league put all these teams in this boat where you don't know who's going to be in your arena and all that kind of stuff. So I do love the 3-game finals. I know I was seeing a bunch of people saying it should just be the single elimination thing. I love it. I mean, the biggest thing you can do, pay the players more so it's just a full-time league and they don't have to work secondary jobs. And then, Phil, you can have Wednesday night games and Tuesday night games and all those fun games like a hockey or a basketball throughout the week. And then you don't have to shrink a season to help other leagues. I think that would be more fun. But, Phil, we do have a game to preview a bit, and I dove into the numbers a bit. Calgary coming in 13-5, set number 2 seed. They had 12.11 goals for, 9.28 goals against in the regular season. In the playoffs, they're coming in 10.67 goals for, 9.67 goals against. Phil, dug in the numbers more. They were 7-2 at home, 6-3 on the road, and this is even deeper. It seems like the magic number is 12. When they score 12 or more goals, they've done it 12 times, they're 11-1. When they were held under 12, they're 2-4. In the playoffs, they've beaten Panther City 12-9. They lost to Colorado 8-7. They beat Colorado at home 13-8. So again,
12.
Over 12 or 12 and over, 2-0, under 12, 0-1. Phil, they're pretty good, and they didn't miss the playoffs like I thought they would.
Yeah, Calgary scares me quite a bit. I don't know. We're talking about Calgary right now. I was going to just kind of lump them together, but Calgary is, the big thing to me with them, obviously they have the goaltending, which is huge. Every team that is left, even, I don't know what the heck happened in Toronto. We're still a little baffled by that series. I can't tell if the Bandits are simply hitting their stride that incredibly or Toronto also just semi-imploded, and as did Nick Rose. I'm not really sure. I don't get what happened with Nick Rose. But back to what I was saying, Nick Rose, Vince, Ward, and Del Bianco are all incredible goalies. That's why their teams are where they are. So Calgary has the goalie aspect of it. You're not looking at that being a weakness by any means. They have the offense. The big thing to them, obviously, is their transition game. That is what they're known for. That is what they are extremely good at. But it's also something that the Bandits have been extremely good at shutting down all season. So I think, I'm not going to say the Bandits would be straight kryptonite for Calgary. I'm sure they would still get transition goals. They're extremely good team at that. But something that the Bandits have really worked on this season that they weren't very good at 2 years ago was the transition game. This year, they have not allowed all that many transition goals, and Toronto was a very good transition team. And once again, the Bandits were able to stop them for the most part with all of their transition as well. So I think Calgary is a scary team. I think they're the scarier team to me right now with just how they're playing, and their makeup of their team, I think, is a little bit more complete. But I think their biggest weapon, other than Del Bianco, is their transition game. And I think the Bandits have done a very good job shutting that down all season. I think they would be, again, they're going to get theirs. It's like any good player. They're going to score a few points. You can't shut them out, most likely. So I'm sure they'd still get a few transition goals, but I think the Bandits have done a really good job at what Calgary uses as their number one strength on offense.
So we'll move over to Colorado, who had slightly weird of a season based on being a defending champion, but a lot of injuries. They just didn't manage it like Buffalo did. Coming in 9-9 wild card team. Yes, they're the 4th seed in the West Coast, but remember, they were the wild card team. They 10.56 goals for, 11.56 goals against in the playoffs, 11 goals for, 10.67 goals against. So they're above their averages from the regular season. When it comes to home road difference, this is where you see it. 7-2 at home, 2-7 on the road. Season high is just 15 goals, which is unbelievable. Again, magic number, I think it's 12. 12 goals or more in games 7 times this year. They went 6-1. When they scored 6 or less, they went 3-8. So again, 12 is the magic number in the playoffs. 13-12 win over San Diego, 8-7 win over Calgary, 13-12 loss in Calgary. Again, it seems like the first team to 12 stands the best chance to win it. You see that versus, they beat San Diego 13-12. They lost to Calgary 13-12. It's going to come down to who gets to that 12 goal first.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Colorado is simply that revenge narrative. I know the Bandits have it against Calgary for the 3 years ago championship now. And at the same time, Colorado, it just has owned the Bandits even this season. They beat them pretty handily. And then again, we know how the conference finals went. So I think the biggest thing with them is simply that revenge narrative. Like, if you wanted one of these two teams, I think Colorado is the weaker of the two. Obviously, they're going to a game 3 for a reason, so they can hang with that, with the Calgary as well. But at the same time, I don't know. The way the offense for the Bandits is playing, I think you can get to Ward. I think he is a ridiculously good goalie when it comes to playoffs, and the style he plays seems to be a little bit anti-Buffalo, but at the same time, Buffalo has found a way to score against a similar style goalie in Nick Rose, who also just doesn't move all that much. I think Ward is a little bit more of a mover, but at the same time, I think that the Bandits offense can find a way to get to him. And after that, yes, again, you've seen that their offense is that bigger body offense, but I think the Bandits went out and got the players they needed on defense to kind of counteract that. So to me, right now, I would say the Bandits kind of own up against Colorado a little bit better, and I would love to see them kind of take that away from Colorado, especially after they beat them during the year. And I think Calgary is the slightly better team. So out of the two, if just straight up, I think I'd want to see Colorado more, not only revenge narrative, but I think they are the weaker of the two teams. At the same time, like you said, with the Bandits offense rolling the way it is, I think they can get to 12 first, but it does seem like 12 is a very, odd is a weird way to put it, but a very odd kind of need to hit number.
So I'll just run through these players. We don't really have to talk in depth because that will be on the following Friday show when we preview the series, knowing who we're actually facing. But I think it's important because a lot of fans are going to be watching this game, just to know some of the names. Lefties for Calgary. I'll run through Calgary's team first. Lefties in the forward group: Tanner Cook, Jesse King, Dan Taylor. For the righties is Josh Courier, Tyler Pace, Kyle Waters, Hayden Dixon. And then transition game, the big names you got to worry about, like we said, Zach Courier, Eli Salama, Jeff Cornwall, Chris Willman is the face-off man, and then Shane Simpson is the speedster out of the back, and then obviously your goalie and Christian Del Bianco. Phil, anybody you really want to talk about in that group? Maybe one or two that you really want to specify, and I know where you're going because it's going to be your hot and bother Zach Currier.
Yeah, it's always going to be Zach Currier and his ridiculously high stats. I mean, the big thing with him is not just the fact that he's a transition player. Again, you and I have kind of taken loose balls a little bit out of it, but the number he has is ridiculous. So 228 loose balls is really, really high. Whether you want to say loose balls are important or not, that's still a ridiculously high number. But the big thing with him, 43 caused turnovers is just insane. 18 block shots, also just insane. And even in playoffs alone, 15 caused turnovers. It's just a ridiculous number. I don't know how he's that good at turning the ball over by himself, but he's ridiculously good at caused turnovers. And you and I have really started to put a lot of weight into that stat. I mean, we've seen the Bandits take it straight from a turnover into a goal. I mean, that is literally the definition of transition, but we saw it with Ian McKay. We've seen it with Bomberry. We've seen it with Priolo, where they just pick off a pass, sprint out, and they're gone, and it's a goal. Zach Currier has that ability in him with 15 goals and the caused turnovers. He has that ability to just change an entire game that quickly, pick off a pass and take it off and score. So to me, he's obviously one of the bigger ones you have to talk about. But even Salama with 38 caused turnovers, they're just a very high caused turnover type defense transition team, which is scary as well. But I mean, other than that, their offense doesn't terrify me. I know Pace is very good. I understand King is really good. But outside of that, they don't have a ton that worries me. I mean, they have Dixon, they have Cook, they have players that are definitely good. I'm not saying that they are bad players, but they don't really have your Dane Smith, Josh Byrne type setup that the Bandits do. I mean, to them, it would be King and Pace, but to me, they're not on the same level that Dane Smith and Josh Byrne are. So I think their offense is there, but it's not quite as scary. The transition game, however, is pretty terrifying.
So I'll run through Colorado. We'll do the same thing again. The names kind of sound more familiar because, one, you played them this year, and two, you had the finals against them, so 3 times. So a lot of these names are going to sound familiar. For the lefties in the forward group, Dylan Kinnear, Eli McLaughlin, Connor Robinson, and Chris Wardell, along with Ty Thompson. And then in the righties, Evan Downey, Tyson Gibson, Ryan Lee, who is just unbelievable in 6 games. He's got 39 points in the regular season. He's even better in the playoffs. Brett McIntyre, and then Zed Williams, the Bandit Kryptonite. And then the transition game in defense, Robert Hope. You got Jordan Gillies, Jalen Chaster, Warren Jeffrey, and then in net, like you said, Dylan Ward. Anybody really there you want to talk about?
I mean, I don't want to talk about this team at all, if we're going to be completely honest. Their defense and transition, not nearly as scary as Calgary's, but we know what players they have that are scary. Zed Williams, again, Ryan Lee actually playing finally. I mean, in playoffs, he's done a pretty good job, 4-15 and 19. I mean, I don't think he's nearly as dominant, and kind of after that season that he had where he was right with the best of them, I don't think he's returned to that level since the injury, and it might simply take him an offseason. I'm not saying he doesn't have it in him anymore. I think he's still very good, but I don't think he's quite hit the level that he was at before his injury. So he's still very scary, but the big ones, obviously, Williams and McLaughlin being back as well. Connor Robinson, he's a little bit scary for the Bandits because he's someone that likes sharpshooting from the outside, and that's usually the type of goals that the Bandits, I don't want to say give up, but those are the kind of goals that the Bandits like to let shoot. I mean, they keep players to the outside as much as possible and just kind of let them take those shots. So similar to a Schreiber, I mean, Robinson is that player that loves to shoot from the outside, and those are the kind of shots that the Bandits love to give up. Obviously, I'm sure they are ready for that, but he's kind of one to keep an eye on. But the biggest one, obviously, we all know it's Zed Williams and his big frame. What can the Bandits do to actually finally shut him down and stop him? He is the number one guy. And then, obviously, Ward is someone that the Bandits also have not figured out all that well yet, but I think with the way their offense is rolling right now, they would be able to kind of handle it. But so far in playoffs, he's playing pretty well, 2-1, 10.67, 80%, pretty much on par for what he has the ability to do. I think the Bandits offense is just, I don't know, they're rolling on a different level right now, so hopefully if it comes down to it, they can figure him out. But I think Ward and Williams are the 2 big W's to keep an eye out for.
So we went through this whole show the second half of it, at least previewing the Colorado-Calgary game a bit, just because of how important this is for the Buffalo Bandits in Banditland to figure out which team is moving on to the finals to face your Buffalo Bandits. So, Phil, I just got real quick questions. We'll wrap this up. We're almost at the end here. And I just need 30 seconds in a player's name and why. What player from Calgary needs to have their best game to win on Saturday? And then we'll ask the same question for Colorado, and then I'll give you my answers if they're different.
Mine is kind of a cheap way out that I simply love because I love the position more than pretty much anything. But to me, like most situations, I mean, if it's baseball, it comes down to your pitcher. If it's football, it comes down to your quarterback. If it's NLL, it comes down to your goalie. So to me, you have two extremely good goaltenders going at it. Del Bianco looking at potentially goalie of the year, MVP type season he is looking at. I mean, look at Matt Vince and what he's been able to do for the Bandits so far in playoffs, just playing out of his mind and pretty much letting them cruise to a victory. Obviously, the offense was a massive part of it as well, but Vince playing extremely, extremely well. And to me, it all comes down to the goalies. I know offense is a big part of it, but goalie to me is arguably the most important player on that field as far as if they have a bad game, then your season's over. If they have a really, really good game, your season is right there for the taking and you're moving on to a championship. So for me, I will make it very simple and just say both Ward and Del Bianco, I think, are the two players that need to pretty much play out of their mind. I mean, we saw Ward do it against the Bandits last season where the Bandits had a lot of good shots, good quality opportunities, and he was there to shut them down, and that's a big reason they were able to defeat the Bandits. It's going to be the same thing here. It's either Del Bianco or Ward. One of them is going to step up more than the other, and I think that's going to be the deciding factor in these games.
I do love it. The goaltender battle, I think, is the main one there. But for me, I'll just go two players real quick. For Calgary, Shane Simpson, 18 goals, 10 assists, 28 points. He's the main guy in the transition game. I think if Del Bianco can find him loose and he can get one or two goals, put it behind Dylan Ward, I think that's going to help their offense quite a bit. And then for Colorado, Chris Wardell. He's got 4 goals in the playoffs so far, 2 on the power play. I think if he gets going, and I think he had 2 of those dunks last week in the Calgary game. I think if he gets 1 or 2 goals, I think Colorado probably advances as well. I know the goaltender battle is probably the top number there, but those are my 2 names. So Phil, real quick, don't really need to know a score prediction, but if you want, you can give it to me. But who is coming out of the West to face Buffalo next weekend?
I truly think Calgary can take it. I do like Colorado. I do think they are playing well. Obviously, they got here for a reason, but to me, Calgary overall as a complete roster is the better team. So I think that they will be able to push through and win it all.
I also have Calgary. I think just it would be right to see the 2 MVP finalists, Christian Del Bianco and Dane Smith going against each other. It would be just right to see the goaltender of the year's possibilities between Del Bianco and Matt Vince going against each other. I think that is just the battle we want to see is can Buffalo take their offensive firepower and beat a possible MVP award winner in net. And I mean, regardless of who comes out of the West, it is a rematch for the Buffalo Bandits. Either the team that beat them back in 2019 in Calgary Roughnecks or the team that defeated them last year in Colorado. And I think it's going to come down to who gets to 12 first. So I got Calgary getting to 12 first. I think it's going to be a very close game, maybe like a 13-11 game, 12-10 game, something within 2 goals. And it's going to be a battle, and I'm excited for Saturday night.
I know we weren't giving scores, but I was also, as you were talking, leaning 13-11 before you said 13-11. So we'll just
we did get 13-11 for the last time also, so that seems to be the key number for us.
We're just going to predict that from now on. 13-11, whichever team gets a 12, it keeps our 12 magic number in there, and 13-11 is a great score. So we're just going to predict that for every single game from now on.
So Phil, anything else before we shut it down and enjoy our bye week, but more importantly, watching Saturday night?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see what the players look like. I've always wondered if other teams watch other teams, and if they do they watch it as a team? Like, is it all the Bandits players just kind of back at their homes, on a bye week, or do they get together and watch it as a team, kind of like a film study almost. Like, okay, let's watch this game. Let's see what's going on, try to dissect it a little bit. Or do they watch it, just Dane and Josh watching it together somewhere else and everybody's just kind of watching it separately, talking to each other, I'm sure, about what's going on. But how much do they actually watch the other games? I mean, I forgot what it was or what sport it was, but I mean, you have some sports where the one team finishes up and that game's over and there's another game right after. Like, do they just take all their equipment off and immediately turn that game on in the background and start watching that one? I mean, how much do they actually watch the other games? I mean, this one, a little bit different. You're on a bye week. It's a team you're going to play in the championship. I'm sure they're going to be watching. But again, do they get together as a team to watch, or do they all just watch it separately and kind of enjoy it as they want to?
Really, the only video that really popped in my head was that breaking the drought for the Buffalo Bills
Right.
when they were watching
Right.
the Cincinnati game. But I think they'll get pizza, wings. I think the guys that are still here in Buffalo will get together. I think the guys that are out of town obviously are not going to be doing that because
Right.
it's
out of town.
it's Saturday night on a weekend on their bye week. Why would they fly into Buffalo? But I think definitely the guys that are here, like the Burns, the Josh Smiths, the Josh Smith, Phil, I got to end the show. Dean Smith, Klutch, all those guys that are still in town would probably get together and watch the game. I don't think it would be like a film study, but I think it would just be, okay, who would we got to face? And then Sunday is film study. But we'll end it there. Good luck to both teams because you got a juggernaut waiting for you on the following Memorial Day weekend. So thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow along with us on Facebook and Instagram at Buffalo Sports Collective and on Twitter, Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure you leave us that review on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye-bye.